this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. Behind me, you'll see a poster of one of my favorite films. It's about being stuck and not knowing which pathway to take. And it's funny because this is actually a set for a project that Kevin Jagernauth and I were about to launch pre-coronavirus. Until we set sail in a way. We had done a soft launch with some recorded episodes. We're testing out the formula, and I don't want to say we're stuck at sea, but Kevin, what exactly happened?
Well, the coronavirus hit us like everyone else. So in a normal situation, you would see the two of us on one screen together, but we're probably like 4 kilometers apart. But even then, we're both stuck at home and trying to give you a taste of what this show will bring once we're all allowed to go back outside again.
So what Kevin and I decided to do is go forth with this project. It might look scrappy, might feel a little bit scrappy as well. Perhaps there'll be more visible mistakes than what we saw in the water bottle left behind in Little Women. But I think the importance is about creating and connecting and promoting the art that we love most in this time, this crazy times. So my first question to you, Kevin, is what has been your survival strategy?
Good question. Yeah, it's been an interesting time, not being able to see friends or family and do all sorts and do that kind of thing. But just like you, we spend all of our time at the cinema. So it's been weird not to be there, to be honest. But one way I've been sort of trying to keep that experience going and also support the cinemas that I would frequent is taking part in the program that they have across the country in Canada and the US, where you can rent a film from your local art house, something that was going to screen there, and the money is split between the distributor and the cinema. So in the past week or so, I've watched Bacurau and Corpus Christi that way, and it's it's not the same as being at the cinema, but at least I know that it still gives me a little bit of that feeling.
And this weekend, Eliza Hittman's film, which got sabotaged, which got stuck at sea or in the middle of the quake. Focus had to realign their focus, and I think they're doing a VOD release today. So, what are your thoughts about how major studios are sort of like seeing the map, seeing the calendar ahead? Versus what the indie studios are doing, which is instead of being reactionary, they're being proactive. I think. What are your thoughts on those two ecosystems, sort of like dealing with the weight of the world?
I mean, they're two totally different landscapes, I guess. Often smaller films like indie films, they need festival appearances, they need slow rollouts to build buzz, get word of mouth going, and get awareness out there. So, in the case of Never Rarely, it'll be interesting to see how it does. I think the general public, they see a value in paying $20 to rent a blockbuster. They may not see that same perceived value for paying that same amount for a smaller indie film. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But I mean, if you look at A24, they just decided to move First Cow to a fall release. It was originally playing in cinemas as this all unfolded, and they've decided to hold it for now.
So essentially, summer's been canceled, but our engagement with cinema will be modified, and VOD will obviously benefit from our containment. Um, just a thought like this: what do you think is going to be the situation with the drive-throughs? I searched in the U.S. There's 330 drive-through theaters. What kind of movies are they going to be putting out?
Uh, yeah, I mean that's a good question. I'm sure drive-ins typically play the big studio fare, but I mean they can get by on showing classic stuff too. I think people just want to get out. They want to have a place to go, and a drive-in's a great place. I love the drive-in. I think it's super fun.
I missed it.
I think if it provides them an opportunity to leave the house, have a different experience, that's really great. And they're doing well for it. So it's an unintended, I guess, silver lining out of all of this, but it's a good one.
So today, as we speak, I think Disney decided to check out Artemis Fowl
Hmm.
and place that in VOD. And French Dispatch, I think Wes Anderson's film was, I mean, top on both of our lists as one of our most anticipated films of the year. But they, instead of just postponing it, they actually picked out a date in October. What do you think about this, the positioning that's still occurring as we speak?
I think it's a mix of, I mean, all of these dates are, you know, it's relying on a bit of optimism. Like, I think Disney moved Mulan to July. I mean, I think that's very optimistic that we're going to be anywhere close to normal by then. So I think they want to put these movies somewhere. They don't want them to just kind of float in the ether. So they're kind of make a date. But I will not be surprised if these dates shift again, if plans change as the situation unfolds. I mean, for you, I mean, you're hopping from festival to festival. So, I mean, as you know, that whole landscape is changing as well. Like, there's no certainty there either.
So that's a good segue into discussing the film festival circuit. I thought it was almost laughable that when Cannes decided to like postpone and redate their edition for June and July. I don't think that's going to be happening. The Cannes Lions, who are the ceremony or the event for the ads, had postponed till October, and they just canceled today. So let's begin with Cannes. Do you think if we play the long game with Cannes, do you think something like a Cannes Film Festival in November is something that they would, obviously they don't want that, but do you think they would consider it, seeing how everything's unfolding?
Yeah, I think right now I think all options are on the table. I think what Ken wants to avoid is canceling altogether. Um, that's something they don't want to happen. So I think if it has to be November, they'll make it happen. If it's going to be maybe some kind of modified, smaller scale summer festival, maybe they'll do that. But they know that they are they are the film festival of film festivals. They have deep relationships with filmmakers. Filmmakers will hold their movies for them to screen it there, and sales agents really rely on Cannes happening to sell their films. Like a Cannes premiere goes a long way to getting your film sold, even just being selected. So it's not just about the festival; it's about all the repercussions of them. There's a lot of other people tied to it happening or not. So I think they feel that responsibility as well. So I think it will happen. I think July again is optimistic at this point. But yeah, I think in some shape or form they're gonna have a festival.
I often think of Cannes or even the Venice Film Festival as classic film festivals. There's a protocol, there's a tradition. Um, I don't see them thinking along the lines of what TIFF decided to announce or do. Perhaps you can delve into the Toronto Film Festival, which takes place in the first or second week of September, and I imagine that um, every single film nation there's a deep inventory of films that they take to complement their festival. It might be a different flip of the switch for them in terms of what types of films they could receive with what they're proposing. So perhaps we can delve into that actual news headline. It was uh, a press release, a video press release. So let's talk about what Cameron and Joanna sort of like pitched or outlined, and let's take it. Yeah, let's take it from there.
Sure. So I mean, they sort of they are. I mean, they didn't say anything too concrete,
Mhm.
but essentially, they are saying they're going to have something what they call the Festival of Festivals, as TIFF was known for many years as being, which is basically they sort of pick the best from uh, the festivals that have happened already and sort of highlight them. So it opens up a ton of questions. Does it mean they're expecting less world premieres? Is it going to be, they spoke about a digital component. Does that mean it's going to be online only? What will Ontario look like? What will the rules be about public gatherings in September? We don't know. And there's a lot of questions, and they don't know. And so I think they're trying to make soft plans, but allow room for flexibility. I mean, you've been there every year for how I don't know how long, and this is a real this is a real change in direction for them.
For sure. I also what I liked about the potential of a digital imprint is that this is something that's been spoken about for many years about um, us global citizens being much more smarter about how we travel, and
Hmm.
perhaps this is like the ideal setting for them to experiment with the format, for it to potentially be a film festival of festivals for the world as well. So my feeling is that they will be cherry picking a lot more films. If Cannes does not happen, that means everything that played at Sundance, everything that played at the Berlin Festival becomes high valued second international premiere entities. So I could very much see how they might tap into that old philosophy from the mid 80s back in the big chill days and sort of experiment and see, like, perhaps they will have a public persona or profile, um, maybe with some distancing, social distancing. It'll certainly be in place. So um, I like the fact that they came up with this press release this week and are open to um, thinking about it out loud. So I think that's them dealing and assessing the challenge, and also the fact that they are in the autumn means that they do have a lot more latitude in terms of planning whatever edition does come up.
I think the um, the factor that may come into play is Venice often overlaps significantly with TIFF, or at least the last 4 days or something. I'd be curious to know if they've been in discussions with Venice about what they're thinking about, how they might share titles, how they might think about premieres. You know, every year in a normal year, you know, people like you and I, we're always debating about, oh, who's going to get the world premiere, who's going to get international, things like that. I think this year those kind of distinctions will be less important
Mhm.
than just the simple question of how are these films going to be shown.
And so going from TIFF and their long game experimentation, we are now looking in our visors at South by Southwest. By the way, happy birthday to Janet Pearson, who had an anniversary this week. So this week, Amazon Prime boarded with the South by Southwest festival to potentially promote some of their films this month, I believe. I was wondering what your immediate thoughts were on, yeah, just that whole premise. How, what do these films have to gain? What does South by Southwest have to gain, and what's in it for Amazon Prime?
I think it's some good publicity for Amazon at a time when they need some good publicity for sure. With the criticism they're receiving for how they're treating their workers at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But it, I think it's an interesting announcement. You know, it's a flashy announcement without much detail. Um, we don't know if the filmmakers who decide to opt in, it's likely these are all going to be films that don't have any distribution deals in place. It'll be interesting to see what, if any, financial compensation they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
As you might recall, South by or Amazon had a program for the past couple of years at Sundance and South by called Festival Stars, where they would acquire films that didn't get distribution for, I think, up to $200,000 for the rights to exclusively stream it. And then there was a financial sharing model as part of it, but that's not really part of this. We don't know how potential distributors will look at this, whether it's an asset or not to have a film on digital for a few weeks, for 10 days before inking a deal, if that's going to ruin the hopes of that. So I think there's a lot of questions to be answered.
It's very much an old. There's an old paradigm in terms of, how films get launched. They work so hard to get into one of the premier film festivals. They launch. They collect buzz. If they're lucky, they have a bidding war.
Well, it feels like as this coronavirus has hit and as festivals and things have been canceled, there's been a rush of people saying, "Oh, just make it digital. Let's bring film festivals online." But I don't think there's been enough discussion about what that actually means to the filmmakers, to the people who make the movies, and what that means for how they get that return on investment on the
Mhm.
budgets they've spent and things like that.
So that's it for our off the cuff truncated version of IndieSponge. It's not necessarily how we wanted to go about our first episode, but I'm quite happy that we were able to connect and yeah, still remain in the conversation and test out how it looks and feels like this. Perhaps we might be stuck in this type of a situation for a couple of weeks in, maybe a couple of months in. God, I hope that's not the case. But yeah, that's pretty much our first edition. Any parting thoughts, Kevin?
Well, thanks for joining us as we get our feet wet here, and we'll see you next week.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Hey, this is Eric from IndieSponge. Check us out every Friday.